right, this is 49ers Talk brought to you by Big O Tires. At Big O, there are more than just tires. There's free service inspections, oil changes, tire rotations, brakes, and alignments. Keep your ride running its best with Total Auto Care services from your locally owned Big O Tires. And Jennifer, it seems like we've been taping a lot of podcasts here recently as news has been breaking, and we talked a little bit about it yesterday, the possibility of Deebo Samuel coming back. Well, guess what? He is coming back.
It's happening. Deebo Samuel is coming back. The good thing for the 49ers offense is that he knows it. Yes, Kyle Shanahan's offense has evolved over time, but really Deebo Samuel knows exactly where everything is in the building. He knows exactly what to do on the field. He's had Brock Purdy as his quarterback before. So it's not a stretch that Deebo Samuel will fit in like a glove, just as he did before.
Yeah, he just doesn't know where the new hydrotherapy tubs are, as the 49ers added to that. But it's because of, the stuff that's been happening here with the 49ers with a couple of pretty significant injuries. Of course, the biggest one is Ricky Pearsall, and that just simply does not look good. And if there's any more of an indication that the 49ers are just ultra concerned that this could be a season ender type of thing for him, well, they bring back Deebo Samuel, and that softens the blow quite a bit. But there's also Christian Kirk, and they signed him as a free agent early in the offseason, and he's out with a calf strain. So 49ers hoping to get him back. But, certainly the situation with Ricky Pearsall where he has that knee injury, it's related to the PCL injury, the posterior cruciate ligament injury that kept him out for almost half the season last year, including a playoff game as well. And so it's back to the drawing board there with the swelling in his knee, but a little bit more on that. I know that there was, and rightfully so, a lot of people wondering, like, what the heck is going on there? He had that injury last year, goes through 2 practices, and now surgery could be required. Why didn't they just have the surgery early in the off season? Well, there are a couple things there. One is that the PCL is typically a injury that heals on its own. And
Right.
so the 49ers wanted to give him that opportunity to have it heal on its own, like a lot of those injuries do. So if they had opted for surgery right away, say in March or April or whenever, they'd be in a situation where they would have lost him for the year anyway, because that's about a 9 to 12-minute recovery. So that I think that's why when you're looking at the huge time frame as far as those months involved with this, you can understand why they would want to kind of have it play through a little bit. And I guess the surprise was that, man, I guess it's just the intense nature of training camp and maybe, going to the ground some or whatever. But, we saw him practice the first 2 days. And
Right.
certainly if he had had issues the first day, he wouldn't have been out there the second day. But the fact that he had those issues and the swelling in his knee after day 2 kind of makes you think that, this could be a long-term thing.
Right. Generally, PCL injuries aren't operated on immediately. Just for instance, Dominic Pooney had this similar injury. He looked like he could barely walk coming off the field in that preseason game in Las Vegas. And then he made his way back. Obviously, he doesn't have to put as much torque on his knee as much as a wide receiver does, not quite as mobile, but he's not going to have surgery and he's back in the fold as normal. So, Ricky Pearsall, I think they wanted to see how it was going to go. And I'm sure he would have said, hey, it's not healing. Something else needs to be done. So he felt good enough in OTAs, no issue. Came back to training camp, no issue for the first day. And then again, yes, we saw him on day 2. That was Monday. He looked like he was running fine. He was, his usual self on the
Mhm.
practice field, talking with Mike Evans, talking with Brock Purdy, running routes. There was one route in particular where he ran right towards where we were all standing on the sidelines. He dropped the ball and he made it a point to go back into the lineup to make sure he got a good rep. So obviously he wasn't feeling anything until later because otherwise he would have not run extra routes. So something must have happened in the 11 on 11s where it exacerbated whatever issue he was dealing with. And and again, them signing Deebo Samuel indicates that there is something very serious with Ricky Pearsall's knee.
Yeah, so Deebo Samuel comes back to the 49ers, kinda similar, we talked about this, Dre Greenlaw tried to get away, but he came right back. Deebo Samuel tried to get away, but he came right back. So, yeah, Dre Greenlaw, you'll signed, last year with the Denver Broncos. They released him after 1 year. He re-signs with the 49ers. Deebo Samuel was traded to the Washington Commanders for a fifth round pick in last year's draft. 49ers used that pick on Jordan James, the running back, and then he remained unsigned through all this
Mhm.
time. And it certainly looked as if, the 49ers had moved on, and they had, but always kept that door open in case he was needed. And quite obviously, the 49ers feel he's needed. And so he comes back to a team that looks completely different in the wide receiver room from the squad that he left that featured Brandon Ayuk and Juwan Jennings. So he's with Mike Evans, Zhaun Stribling, Demarcus Robinson, Jordan Watkins. I mentioned Christian Kirk, Jacob Cowing. Jacob was around that year, and then three of the young guys who are trying to earn a spot either on the practice squad or the 53 man. Malik Turner, Will Pauling, and Wesley Grimes. So the question is, what kind of role is Deebo Samuel going to have? And he wasn't used much in the backfield last year with Washington. He only had 17 carries, not a whole lot of production as a runner. He did have one touchdown, but remember now, in those 6 seasons with the 49ers, he had 20 plus touchdowns, both rushing and receiving. So it'll just be very interesting to see if he just kind of steps back into the same job description that he had before he left.
Right, and how quickly, right? How quickly does he step right into where he was before? And I think them not having Ricky Pearsall is part of it. And then, yes, like you said, Jordan James, rib contusions, rib fractures, he's been out. So he does add that running element as well. So Deebo Samuel is just an athlete and a very good one. He can step in as a running back, he can do all those gadget plays, and then he can also be a wide receiver type target for Brock Purdy. That also is, I think, a huge part of it, right? He has played with Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy knows how he comes out of his breaks, what type of routes he runs, where to find him. I think that also makes it a really easy transition back for Deebo Samuel.
We're back on 49ers Talk, brought to you by your locally owned Toyota dealers. Toyota, let's go places. So, it's funny to ask this question in a sense, but I mean, is it possible the 49ers upgraded at wide receiver? I don't think so. I mean, a healthy Ricky Pearsall, I think we saw it last year. He's a really good player, and he led the team as far as the wide receivers go with receiving yards per game. The problem is, he missed as many games as he did. He missed the 8 games last year, including also one in the playoffs. Didn't have any catches in the postseason. He returned to action in that game against Seattle, played a lot, but just he didn't have any production. So, Deebo comes back to the team. We know what Deebo is. Deebo's very good against zone coverage. He has good yards after the catch. When he is playing at that high level, and it looks like he's determined to get back on the NFL landscape, because I think he kind of felt like the rest of the league had forgotten about him. He was out of a job from the end of last season until just now. It looked, based on the videos he was posting, that he was in good shape. So it very well be, Jennifer, that the 49ers are getting a very motivated Deebo Samuel.
Absolutely. And then the looks like the price tag is not that high. It looks
Mhm.
like what Ian Rappaport is showing 1 year at $7 million. I'm guessing there's incentives built in there. And so that's a really economical choice for the 49ers. It's a guy who they know, who they can trust, who is going to be on the field as much as he wants to. And yes, it is kind of like a prove it to everybody else that he's still got it. After being a free agent and not having a team, I think there's always a little extra chip on a guy's shoulder when he wants to show that he's still capable of being a playmaker and a difference maker on a team.
Yeah, and that contract is interesting because you knew, for all that Deebo Samuel did for the 49ers, and then last year he played on an $18 million contract with Washington that, the 49ers kind of had to toe that line. If they were interested in bringing him back, they couldn't give him a contract offer that would, be seen as an insult. But you also had a difficult time thinking that they would go, close to 10 million or over 10 million for his services. So it is, I think, a deal that certainly works for both sides. And I think for Deebo Samuel to get in an NFL training camp at this point is one thing. To get into an NFL training camp with an offense he knows, with a team he knows, with a coach he knows and likes, and that the coach likes him, I think that's important. So there's going to be very little transition period other than getting to know Mike Evans and Dejan Stribling and everybody else in that room. But, as far as everybody else, we saw that when Debo started talking about kind of feeling anxiety that he didn't have a team, who were the first two guys to kind of step up and say, Debo, we have a room with your name on it. It was Kyle Juszczyk and George Kittle.
Yep, yep. I mean, familiarity, right? In the locker room, on the field, all of it. And, you know, there was something missing with their entrance last year with the bump box, and it was Deebo Samuel not being next to Trent Williams. It was good, but it wasn't quite the same energy as when Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel are out there walking it out with that big giant boom box. So I know he's going to be welcome to the locker room. A lot of players there will be excited. New faces too,
Mhm.
but the guys that played with him are going to be really excited to see him back. And, I'm sure he wants to prove that he still has it, and that's going to make him even hungrier on the field. And that's going to be great for them.
Yeah, I did mention Dre Greenlaw earlier, and I do think that these are kind of connected in this sense that, Debo didn't have a great 2024 season with the 49ers, and
Mhm.
Dre Greenlaw, barely played in 2024, and both of those guys went their separate ways. But even though the 49ers had a good season last year, I do think that they were missing what I would call butt kickers, badass guys, butt kickers. That's what Dre Greenlaw was.
Mhm.
And that's what he brings. He brings a different kind of emotion, a different kind of aggressiveness to that defense. And it certainly didn't help the 49ers last year that Nick Bosa was injured and Fred Warner was injured, and those guys didn't play.
Tone
Offensively,
setters. They're both
yeah,
tone
absolutely.
setters.
Absolutely. And so Debo, even though I think the offense does have some guys that kind of fit that bill, most specifically George Kittle and Trent Williams, Debo brings something. And when Debo is playing right, and again, I think the 49ers are going to get the best out of Debo. If whatever Debo Samuel has left in that tank at his age, he's going to bring it because I do think he's highly motivated. But he's the kind of guy when he was, in a lot of ways, kind of epitomized what the 49ers were during those few years. He was the kind of guy that defensive players would stand up and take notice and get motivated watching him play offense and not shying away from hits, just going after people.
It makes defenses make decisions. There are a lot of players that made a business decision not to go straight on with Debo and try to go at his legs, maybe kind of not do a complete head on head tackle of Debo Samuel. He makes defenders make business decisions. And a lot of times, Debo Samuel would be on the upper hand of those decisions.
We've talked about this before. I'm a little bit surprised the Commanders haven't or did not re sign him because I guess the one thing that would kind of stand out about, questions whether he's lost a step or still has it, a career low 10.1 yards per reception. But last year with Washington, he still caught 72 passes. He caught 72 passes for 727 yards and 5 touchdowns. So it's not like he was completely ineffective. He had a lot of targets, he had a lot of catches, he was productive, and for all the talk and being associated with, the Commanders being associated with Brandon Ayuk, it's interesting to me that they didn't just focus on Debo Samuel and have a role for him coming back to that team, and all the talk about Brandon Ayuk, and now I don't know, who's knows what's going on with Ayuk. I can't imagine him playing for anybody, but it's kind of interesting to see how this thing has kind of worked its way out where, at the outset of free agency, the 49ers got Mike Evans, and then, they had a plan quite clearly to add to the wide receiver position in the draft, and they did that with Zhaun Stribling with the 33rd overall pick. And remember, the 49ers drafted or they traded out of the first round, and they had that first pick in the second round. All kinds of teams are calling them, trying to move up to 33. Ultimately, the 49ers decided that it was more important for them to take Dejon Stribling than it was for them to move back and acquire more picks. And I got to say, I don't want to jinx the guy, and it's, the pads haven't even gone on yet, but he looks like he has an opportunity to be a big time contributor in this 49ers offense.
Yeah, I think both rookies, Dejon Stribling and Kalen Black, are going to have opportunities to make a difference, especially when you look at how Kyle Shanahan wants to spread the ball around. And Kalen Black is that receiver, running back type guy. I think he was just under the radar because Indiana was such a stacked team last year, kind of flew under the radar. Can't believe he didn't get invited to the combine. But I think he, like, just looking at him, obviously no pads on yet, but just watching his burst out of the backfield, I think is pretty impressive. And then you add Deebo Samuel on the power and him wanting to have revenge on everybody who doubted him. I think that it helps the 49ers greatly on the offense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah. Again, it'll be interesting to see what they have planned for him. If they're gonna try to have him more in a specialized role, or if it's going to be, the Deebo Samuel that we really saw unleashed in the Super Bowl. After the 2019 season, where he had those rushing yards. And I mean, not too much of a stretch to think that if the 49ers had won that game, that maybe even Deebo Samuel, he could have been in that conversation for Super Bowl MVP. But he had some really good seasons with the 49ers, including, I think it was 2021, where he had like 1,400 yards
Mhm.
receiving, and basically willed that team to within one victory of the Super Bowl, of a
Yeah.
return trip to the Super Bowl. So, uh, Deebo Samuel coming back to the 49ers. Um, I, I didn't know it was going to happen as far as the timing of it. Figured that, you know, if it were to happen, it would happen maybe a little bit later in camp, which once the 49ers kind of sorted out their wide receiver position and kind of saw what
Mhm.
they had. But
Right.
quite clearly, the injury to Ricky Pearsall, and maybe to a lesser degree, the injury, well, certainly combined with the Pearsall injury and the Christian Kirk injury, it made it kind of a necessity for the 49ers to go ahead and make a deal, not only to get a camp wide receiver, somebody to just come in and fill out the roster, but to get somebody who's going to make the 53-man roster and who's going to have a major impact on the successes or failures of this season's team.
Absolutely. I mean, Deebo Samuel has been a difference maker for the 49ers, and I think he's set up to do it again. I mean, he's going to have opportunities with Ricky Pearsall being out. And if Christian Kirk, at for how long is he going to be out? And Jordan James, how long is he going to be out? Deebo Samuel is going to get acclimated very quickly. I did do a little discovery work on Jordan James and his rib injuries. And I know that there's the 49ers posted Fred Warner mic'd up in that punching out of the ball, and people are speculating that that move was what fractured Jordan James' ribs. Well, that is not the case. Fred Warner was mic'd up on day one of training camp practice. Day one was when he punched the ball out with Jordan James. That's the one that is on social media, that's on their account. Jordan James was injured on day two. So, as much as people are saying it's 100% Fred Warner punching him and breaking his ribs, it was not that play. We still don't know how Jordan James has the rib fractures, but it was not the play that is on the 49ers social website.
Got it. So you're saying the mic'd up was day one, and the
Yes,
video that everybody saw was day one, and
correct.
Jordan James was injured on day two.
Correct. Because we saw
Okay,
Jordan
great.
James.
Yeah, no,
Do
absolutely. Yeah, we
yeah.
saw him. Yeah, he
Mhm.
no, he practiced a lot in
Mhm.
those 2 days. And, that's one thing that I think has kind of stood out to me, Jennifer. It just feels to me like they're putting a lot more emphasis on the running game as far as tightening the screws there and making sure that the minutia, the that everything is in sync from a run game standpoint, and it starts. And Colton McKivitz talked about this on Wednesday. The guys on the outside blocking too, and so Deebo Samuel, he knows what it takes. I mean, I think back to the Senior Bowl of 2019 when a young Deebo Samuel just happened to be assigned to the Senior Bowl team that the 49ers were coaching. They fell for him then. They drafted him in the second round and had 6 very productive and very entertaining seasons. And he went away for one, and now he's coming back.
He is back.